disinformation and the confusion and chaos that was created online. Folks who have been a part of my nonprofit, folks who had followed me for years on cable network, on broadcast network, were reaching out to me saying, look, we are confused. We don't know what information to believe and what we should be doing in this moment of crisis. So we launched a special report with Areva Martin, and we probably broadcast over, I don't know, a course of 2 years. And we had some of the nation's leading experts and thought leaders and incredible storytellers, authors, elected officials, you name it, they were here on the special report. The show was so popular that we won 2 Telly Awards. We won an Anthem Award for bringing to the community, bringing shows that were impactful, that told the lives of real people, and that helped people get much needed information. So the special report with Areva Martin went on a little hiatus after the COVID scare was over. As many of you know, you followed me on another platform where I was doing a daily show. And then the election hit, the most historic election of our times. Kamala Harris was chosen to be the candidate for the Democratic ticket. And I took the special report on the road. I traveled to 7 battleground states, talking to people all around the country about the election and what it meant potentially to have our first African-American female president. Well, as you all know how that turned out, didn't happen. Kamala Harris was not elected. Donald Trump was elected. And here we are, fast forward, the wildfires, the brush fires that broke out in Southern California about a week and a half ago, devastating thousands and thousands of homes and impacting thousands of families. 24 people reported died in those brush fires. And again, disinformation all over the internet about what caused the fires, who's responsible, what Karen Bass did or didn't do as the mayor of Los Angeles. And again, getting so many people reaching out to me about how they should respond, what they need to know in this moment of crisis. So when there is a crisis, we step in to fill the void. We step in to separate fact from fiction, true information from disinformation, and to be that trusted voice for you. So for the next 6 weeks, at least, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on Facebook, on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. We're going to be here 9 a.m. PST, and you're going to be able to watch it throughout the day. We're going to separate fact from fiction. We're going to bring you those stories that people have been, the stories related to people who have been impacted by the fires. We're going to talk about the politics of natural disasters. We're going to talk about rebuilding communities. We're going to talk about disparities and inequities. We're going to bring you information on how you can file for FEMA benefits and SBA loans and get access to all of those benefits that may help you rebuild. We're going to help break down what it means to survive the kind of natural disaster that has happened in California. We've seen this around the country, whether it's in Hawaii or New Orleans or other places that have had these kinds of disasters. We want to make sure, again, that you, my viewers, those of you, those 100,000s, those millions of you that have been with me on this journey, that have supported and watched the special report, that have supported my nonprofit, the Special Needs Network, that have donated your time, your money, your resources. Well, I just want you to know that as much as you've given to me and to the nonprofit organization, we're going to pour that in to this broadcast. So we have a team of incredible people. I put the band back together. Rashad Miller, who is my technical producer all the way from Chicago, is helping us make this show the best that it could be. The extraordinary Ianthe Jones, who has been with me. She and I have been riding for probably almost 2 decades now, doing television, doing the best in daytime television, and working on all kinds of special media projects. She's going to executive produce this show, and we have a couple of other new members who you'll get to meet over the course of these 6 weeks. All right, so I've given you the why we are back. I've given you the who's behind this great production, and now we want to talk about this day. I started my morning on TV talking about Dr. Martin Luther King as a civil rights lawyer. There could be no one more important to my career than the civil rights pioneers that paved the way for us to have so many of the rights and benefits that we enjoy as Americans today. And clearly on top of that list is Dr. Martin Luther King. His birthday, his life, his legacy are so incredibly important to we, not only Black people, but all Americans. And today, ironically, on the day that we are celebrating the life of this icon, of this incredible civil rights leader, we are also acknowledging the transition of power. Donald Trump is being inaugurated today in Washington, D.C. Now, he says the inauguration that's been outside throughout pretty much the history of this country, except for one example. He said he had to move it into the rotunda of the Capitol because of the weather. We're going to talk about that. We know that Donald Trump has issues with crowds, and it didn't look like he was going to have the kind of crowd that would be satisfying to him. But also we're going to talk about what Dr. King, what would he think? Where is his dream today? How would he respond to a Donald Trump presidency? How would he respond to Donald Trump's efforts to roll back diversity, equity, and inclusion programs? How would he respond to Donald Trump's policies to deport millions and millions of immigrants who have come into this country? How would he respond to the MAGA crowd bastardizing the words of his famous speech, using the phrase about, focusing on people's character, the content of their character, rather than the color of their skin, those words being taken out of context and used by Donald Trump and others in the MAGA community. So for the next couple of minutes and for this fully packed hour, we have some of the nation's leading DEI experts who are going to join me to talk about the irony of celebrating Dr. King's Day on the day of the presidential inauguration. And then on the back end of the show, we're going to bring you up to speed on the wildfires, the Altadena, the Eaton fires, and the Pacific Palisades fire. We're going to be talking to a chief from the Los Angeles County Fire Department, again, trying to dispel so many of the myths around those brush fires. So I am excited to bring on my guest. Joining me this morning, Dr. Omikanga Dibinga. He is no stranger to sitting down and talking with me. He has been with me. He started with me, I believe, when we started the special report. Then he followed me to another network and show that I was doing. So I'm glad to have him joining me. He's written one of the definitive books about race. It's called Lies About Black People. Also, Fatima Gilliam is here. She is a fellow lawyer, and she's also an expert on diversity, equity, and inclusion. She's written a very important book on race. It's called Race Rules, What Your Black Friend Won't Tell You. Dr. Dibinga and Fatima, thank you so much for just always jumping on and being a voice on these issues. Fatima, I'm going to start with you. You are an expert on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know you've been doing a lot of interviews leading up to this inauguration day. But before we talk about Donald Trump, just give me your reflections this morning on the significance of Dr. Martin Luther King and why millions of people around this country are celebrating him today.
I mean, obviously, he was extremely impactful for civil rights and for us to have more rights in this country. But one thing that I find always very important to remember when we think about the impact and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King is to remember more of what he stood for. And I get so bothered when people want to talk about, his I Have a Dream speech, as if that's only what he ever talked about. And instead, what they do is they use it as an opportunity to promote colorblindness, as if he were for colorblindness, as opposed to the fact that the reality is he was for reparations, he was for equity, he was, when he was murdered, it was right before the Poor People's Campaign that he had started. And so I think it's really important to remember what he did as a contribution, but not to take his words, which I feel that people on the right have weaponized, and then including people that are Democrats and on the left just misunderstand. One of my favorite quotes from him, and I'm going to paraphrase it so I won't get it exact, but he said, a country that has done something special to the Negro for hundreds of years must now do something special for the Negro, which is evidence that he is for reparations, he was for affirmative action. And I think we need to remember that. And remember that when he was out there advocating for our rights, people like him, people like Medgar Evers, people like Malcolm X, and Muhammad Ali, I guess I'm sticking with the first name M, apparently, but what they were doing was advocating for things when it wasn't popular. If you look back, Martin Luther King did not have an overwhelming support of Americans and of white Americans. And that is the case now for people who are advocating for things like Black Lives Matter and social justice. So I think it's important to remember more of the context of what he represented, who he was. And as he was pushing for change, not everybody got on board, but in retrospect, when people want to engage in revisionist history after the fact, apparently everyone was supposedly in favor of, and he was allegedly in favor of colorblindness, when that is antithetical to what he stood for.
So, Fatima, when you look at where we are in this country, when you look at the wealth gap between Blacks and whites, you look at the number of African Americans who serve as CEOs at Fortune 500 companies. You look at the number of African Americans that serve as presidents of major institutions such as colleges and universities. And you just look in terms of where Black folks are in every aspect, every sector of this economy. What do you think Dr. King would say about the progress that we have made since some of the historic work that he did in the 1960s?
I think he would be happy and proud to see that we have made inroads, but he would be thinking that we haven't gone far enough. And in addition to not having gone far enough, he would say for the people who are CEOs, who are running companies, that they themselves are not doing enough for their own people. I can't remember the quote offhand, but I do recall that he spoke about these kinds of things. And there are plenty of people who are just too comfortable in this moment, which is why when you have this broad scale attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, when you have this attack on affirmative action, when you have people still being threatened by the police, many of them are broad scale silent because they've gotten comfortable with where they are. And they think because the system is seemingly working for them, that they don't need to advocate for the collective. So Martin Luther King would be encouraging them, pushing them, calling them out for sitting in their comfort and not thinking about our need for collective progress.
So I think Dr. Dibinga has joined us, and Dr. Omikanga Dibinga is a lecturer at American University. He's also a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist. He's done some work with me in Los Angeles doing training on DEI for clinicians who are working with children with special needs. He's also written a very significant book called Lies About Black People. Thanks, Dr. Dibinga, for jumping into this conversation. What are your reflections this morning about Dr. King and what he would be feeling in this moment about this country and where we are?
I mean, there's so much, right? The first thing that comes to my mind is, I used to listen to Dr. Joe Madison a lot, and he would always bring up this quotation of Dr. King when Dr. King talked about what real integration is. And he said integration is not just, living next to your neighbor and saying, I've made it. He said that real integration is the sharing of power, resources, and responsibility. And when we look at what's going on in the country now, if Dr. King was to be here today, he would be looking at where we're standing as it relates to our power and the lack thereof, as it relates to the challenges on affirmative action. And you look at somebody like a J.D. Vance, who I understand his office has like no women appointed, right? When you look at the representation in Trump's cabinet, there's only like one black male who's there. And of course, they always get HUD. So that power, he would not be seeing that. When you look at the resources, you look at some of these executive orders that are going to be coming, you look at the challenges to DEI that have already been here, that have put out of business organizations like the Fearless Fund and the like. He would talk about the resources being drawn up and disintegrating. And then we talk about responsibilities, where again that kind of connects to the power. Where's the responsibility for making sure that our rights are restored? So I think that if Dr. King wants to see America where we are today, he would probably say again the words that he said to the late Harry Belafonte, that he wonders if he's integrated his family, his people into a burning building, because that's what America feels like right now.
Wow, that's some powerful words. Yes, Harry Belafonte, who fought on the front lines with so many of our civil rights giants. Fatima, both you and Dr. Dibinga work in the DEI space, and we know DEI has been under attack. We know Donald Trump has been very clear about where he stands on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we've seen many major corporations, many corporations that we love, like McDonald's, really step back from their DEI policies. But there's an article about Costco, the big store where everybody goes to buy tons and tons of supplies to be ready for whatever, comes in terms of any disaster. Costco, their CEO is taking a different approach. One of their customers apparently wrote him a letter saying that they were appalled by the fact that they used diversity, equity, and inclusion in hiring. And the CEO wrote back saying, look, if you're saying that we have a diverse workforce, that we endeavor to promote people of color, then yeah, that's true. And that's a policy that we're proud of. Essentially, that's what he said. What do you make of Costco being one of, the very few major corporations being willing to go on the record to say diversity matters, or diversity efforts make us a better store? They add to our bottom line when we know that to be true, but so many other companies like Walmart, McDonald's, not being willing to be honest about that and actually stepping away from diversity policies that they've had in place in some cases for decades.
I think we're in this era, which I call profiles and no courage. And that is where many of the CEOs of other corporations are. If we're talking about Ford and McDonald's and Nissan and Toyota and Walmart, I mean, the list keeps going on of the corporations that have been pulling back or slowly dialing things down. But I'm very happy with what Costco is doing. And what Costco is doing is looking and accepting the realities of the data, right? They have a diverse customer base, they have a diverse employee base, the country is diverse, and there's data that talks about profitability and job satisfaction, a whole bunch of things with the diversity indicators. And I'm happy to see that they're leaning into that data and that reality, whereas other companies are not. And I think companies like Costco need to be held up and encouraged. And because I want Costco and other companies that are still being resistant, like Elf Beauty, that are, trying to advocate for and uphold diversity as a business goal and objective and part of their culture and way of doing business. One thing that I did, just personally did, because I'm just gonna be honest, through the Wellesley Network, we are vast, we are, broad. And, I know a Wellesley alum who's husband is on the board of Costco. And so as a result of that, I wanted to send a note of encouragement for their upcoming shareholder meeting, which is taking place this week, about their commitment to diversity, so that they saw and understood and appreciated that people are supportive on the positive side, because I'm sure they're getting so much backlash on the negative side. And so I encourage people who are listening, who are watching, to do similar things. When they see a company doing something positive, hold them up. Give them a note of encouragement. When you see a company doing something negative, be vocal and say, I'm not shopping there anymore. Like, people need to stop shopping at Walmart.
No doubt about it. Dr. Domingo, how can a Costco and companies that believe in diversity understand that it does improve, add to, not detract from its bottom line? How are they going to survive in this Trump era when you've had Donald Trump and other Republicans be so vocal about their efforts to turn back diversity initiatives, and lawsuits being filed by white employees challenging diversity initiatives? How are they going to stand? How are they going to survive? And how can they encourage, as Fatima said, other companies to be involved in and to continue to work towards more diverse employee bases in the way that Costco has done?
Well, I would add companies like Target to that list as well. And we have to really understand that at the end of the day, when we talk about what this looks like, these organizations have to fight in the same way us individuals have to fight. But they have the money to do it. They have the power to do it. The way they survive is with our support. And I was growing up, I would always hear these stories about, as Black people, if you put all our income together, we'd be like the 10th largest nation, or what in terms of wealth and all of that. We have to start directing our dollars to these places and spaces. Everybody talks about Dr. King, I have a dream, I have a dream, and I have a dream. And of course, that's an important part of his speech. But so many people, not us here, but so many people do not talk about his economic activism. When he talked about boycotting organizations, when he talked about boycotting the ice cream companies and the grocery stores, it was just not the Montgomery bus boycott. And that was one of the main reasons that he became an enemy to this country. So these organizations can survive if we continue to support them, if we continue to be public about what we're doing in our support. They are going to need us now more than ever. They clearly have the money to withstand lawsuits. I mean, so it's like, what's the problem? As Dr. King said, if the time is always right to do right, then the time is right to do right now. And there's nothing, in my opinion, that these lawsuits can do that are going to break these companies. So are you going to take a stand, or are you just going to acquiesce? And I will say, a lot of people talk about these guys who are on the platform with Trump at the inauguration, the Zuckerbergs and all of those guys, they're cowering and bending the knee and kissing the ring. They're not. They're joining together with him in an effort for world domination in their fields, right? And we have to be mindful of that as well. So many of us use these narratives of they're scared. They're not scared. They see him as an avatar, just like the white evangelicals do as well. And so we have to be mindful of the companies that are standing with Trump, the companies that are dialing back, and the companies that are vowing to stay true to their commitment. And those are the ones that need our attention. And those ones that are in the middle, we need to challenge them to do better as well, because there are more of us in this country committed to diversity than those who are not.
Wow, that's really powerful what you just said, Dr. Domingo. You said they're not afraid. So let's get rid of that narrative, that false narrative that somehow Elon Musk, probably the richest man in the world, if not, the top one or two, is afraid of Donald Trump. But you said he sees Donald Trump as a means to an end. Elaborate on that, because I think a lot of people have gotten the impression that the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Elon Musk of the world are somehow, quote unquote, kissing the ring out of fear. But you just spoke truth to power and said, this ain't fear. This is opportunity. This is dollars. This is world domination.
One of the best examples came from Mark Zuckerberg's speech about when he was getting rid of fact checking about a week or two ago. And if you recall that speech, one of the things he said was that his hope is that he can partner with the Trump administration to help to get Europe get rid of some of their regulations on Facebook. That's teaming up. Because in many European countries, their social media restrictions are stronger than they are in the United States. And Zuckerberg wants that gone across the globe. When you look at some of the policies, Facebook has aided in the killing of other people in other Myanmar. We can talk about that. But really at the end of it, so they see that. Elon Musk, he wants to open up and do more business across the globe. He sees Trump as an avatar to be able to let him do that. Look at what they're trying to do with SpaceX and Bezos' company. Look at all of the grants that they got tied to the government, for their platforms, that they can get more money from Trump. And also these lawsuits against Elon Musk. I think it was about 11 lawsuits that the federal government has against Elon Musk right now. Those are going to be gone while he's still getting those grants. And so there's going to be more access to them, more money, more opportunities for them to build their platforms. And on top of that, there's going to be less regulations in the AI space and all these other. So just like Christian white evangelicals saw him as an avatar for issues of like abortion and a woman's right to choose and the like, they didn't care that he was the least Christian person ever. They see him in the same light as it relates to helping to expand their business models. And we have to call that out.
You're so right, Dr. Domingo, which is why it's so infuriating, Fatima. My struggles, the hard work, the hard work of millions of Americans, all of us on this interview that we did to defeat Donald Trump so that we wouldn't be here on this inauguration day having to still try to educate people about the intentions of Donald Trump, about the people that he has surrounded himself with. But poor people, working class people, Fatima, somehow bought into this notion that men like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg were going to fight for them, that they were somehow going to be champions for the little man, the working woman, the working class family. And everything that Dr. Domingo just talked about, those are all efforts to make these billionaires trillionaires, to take them to levels of wealth that we've not even seen in this country ever. But yet people somehow still thought Donald Trump and this billionaire band, were going to be working for them. Do you think anything changes after today when they see the folks who are, around Donald Trump at his inauguration?
I think people are not going to see the light until they experience extreme hardship. I just think that's a reality for some people. But I'll say a couple of things and then dive back into that question. I think it's really important for people who do understand the threat that Donald Trump and the oligarchy pose to Americans and the globe to not co-sign on what is taking place. And what I mean by that, I really love this quote by Timothy Snyder, who's a historian at Yale, and he has his book on tyranny. And his first rule is do not obey in advance, right? There are too many people who are acquiescing in the beginning, which normalizes what they do, and it shifts where the goalpost is of what is normal, what's acceptable. And so I think people need to not get on board. I commend the professor at Stanford, the law professor, who's an intellectual property rights expert, who was an attorney for Meta, for Mark Zuckerberg. And after Mark Zuckerberg made his statements, he was like, you know what? I can't be your lawyer anymore. I can't be your lawyer anymore because you're advancing toxic masculinity and neo-Nazism. And so his lawyer bowed out. And more people need to bow out from and not support. Why, like I was saying before, why are people shopping at Walmart, right? And I think, but getting back to your question, the Democrats are just not successful at messaging. They are terrible. I'm just going to be honest about it. And so as a result of that, somehow the Republican Party and the right has hijacked the notion that they are for working class and middle class people. And so what really needs to take place now is the Democrats need to improve their messaging game. How to do that? I don't have the answers in this moment, but it is critical so that more people can see and experience, because if these tariffs happen, right? These tariffs, which are a tax, and people don't understand basic economics, when the cost of everything, by the time it gets to the marketplace or your supermarket or wherever is more expensive, then that is going to increase the cost and it's going to be inflationary, right? People aren't going to understand these things. These tax cuts, which are just, people look at the charts that show the tax cut, it's going to cost more, working class, middle class people more money, as opposed to the tax cuts that are just going to happen at the top. And so when people experience these things, I don't understand the people who come from immigrant families that supported this man and now all of a sudden are like, oh my God, I can't believe he is going to try to deport us. Well, I don't know what you thought was going to happen to you, right? You got somebody who's saying he wants to get rid of birthright citizenship. Well, at least we have, the Civil War amendments, because good luck with that one, because that one's in the Constitution. But I think it's going to have to be that people personally experience something, right? People are motivated by their selfish self-interest. That is why you had wealthy people voting for Trump. That is why you have people, somehow thinking he's going to be better for them. But once they see and experience that their health care goes away, that their school sucks, that the special needs programs for their children have evaporated, when their roads are falling apart, when all of these things start happening, then they're going to be like, oh, I didn't choose wisely.
Well, we definitely have seen a lot of buyer's remorse. We've already heard, as you said, a lot of immigrant families are worried to death, trying to figure out what these deportation plans look like. We already know he's talking about starting in Chicago, and immigrant families there are incredibly worried and concerned. But Fatima opened the door to something. That's a legal term we use in court when someone brings up a topic that perhaps the judge has previously said was off limits. And then that door is open, you get to walk right through it. And Dr. Dubinga, I know you have some thoughts about these rappers and Black entertainers, Nelly and Snoop, to be exact, who are participating in the inaugural events. Snoop, we know, has that infamous 2016, 2017 video where he goes on and he just lambasts anyone, he says, who would participate in Trump's inauguration for his 2016 election. He uses some choice words. He uses the N-word. He calls them jigaboos. And he just goes on this rant, and come full circle, guess who's participating in inaugural events? None other than Mr. Snoop. And Nelly has been trying to defend himself, saying he's an independent, he's not political, that he would have done this for either party. But then he went on to criticize the Biden administration. What do you make of I'm going to call them your brothers, who are participating in the inaugural events?
Look, people do strange things for change. As somebody like myself, who is a rapper, who's a spoken word artist, who teaches on hip hop, hip hop's the soundtrack of my life. I know everybody has different pockets of people that they're disappointed with during this election. For me, it's the black male rappers. Not black male celebrities, because other celebrities in other areas came through big time. The John Legends of the world, the Tyler Perrys of the world, right? But the black male rappers let me down the most. Several, and this is before we even get to Snoop, several of these guys who endorsed Hillary Clinton did not endorse. So we have three groups. We have some that endorsed Trump. We have some that didn't endorse at all. And then some that, endorsed Kamala Harris. And so don't get me wrong. There are people like Common who endorsed, and Quavo, and 2 Chainz, and Lil Jon, and the like, no doubt. So I'm not saying none did, but enough, many did, but not enough. I didn't see, I wrote a dissertation on Jay-Z. I didn't see an endorsement from Jay-Z for her. I saw an endorsement for Hillary Clinton from him. I believe 50 Cent endorsed Hillary. I believe Snoop Dogg endorsed Hillary Clinton. All of these things are researchable. So they could stand up for her, but not come out for this black woman. Of course, it makes Kendrick Lamar, as far as I can tell, did not publicly endorse. And people thought because, Freedom Song was playing and Kendrick's on there that he's automatically in, that Beyonce's married to Jay-Z, he's automatically in. No, we didn't see that. So these guys built their careers in part on misogynoir, their music that, the misogyny towards black women. And then, many of them got daughters now and wives and so on and so forth and couldn't get out and do that. Nas, guys like that. But guys like Eminem and Fat Joe came out publicly for Kamala, and these guys couldn't. I've had trouble even listening to some of these guys since that moment. And so when I see that, it hurts. It's problematic. And so when I see Snoop performing, and Nelly and Rick Ross, who lied and said he was in DC but not performing at the inauguration, and they showed the video, I start thinking, I'm like, well, dang, at the end of the day, did these particular guys in any of I don't know all their lyrics. I know a lot of them. I don't know a lot of Rick Ross stuff because they be faking on stuff. It's not even, anyway, stole a persona. But anyway, in their lyrics on a regular basis, did they ever put out lyrics that uplifted black people? Did they have a Black Lives Matter song or Dr. King, like the Malcolm X song? Like, they never were about that. And so I'm pissed off. But I think we were expecting a lot of things from the wrong people who never really put out work to uplift our community, even though our community put them on. And they need to be challenged just as much as we're challenging companies that are backing from DEI and stuff. We need to put them on blast too.
Can I add something?
I was going to say, I'll give you the last word on this, Fatima. What are your thoughts about these black rappers who are in DC who are performing? And I don't know why people try to lie. Everybody is going to have the receipts, and the receipts are out there as to their performance and participation in this inauguration.
I mean, I think it is utterly disappointing. And I agree that they need to be called out. They need to be held accountable for people who are trying to pretend and make their money off of Black culture. I mean, because obviously they're Black and want to ride the coattails of progress, but then don't want to uplift their own people, right? And then, and it's one thing to be silent, which I think is already problematic, but it's even more problematic and harmful for the Black community and this country to show up and stand next to somebody. And so one thing that I have to say, because I'm just going to keep it real, because I am so upset. I am so upset. I think Snoop's next album should be titled Step and Fetch It, okay? Oh. And he's going to become the White House pet, and he can wear his little dog collar, which can rename him Toby, because he is definitely nothing close to Kunta Kinte, okay? And I know those are some harsh statements, but I feel like more people need to say those kinds of things to put pressure, right? Because, they invited him not just to legitimize what the Trump administration plans to do, but in particular, he made a public statement saying that you're a jigaboo or an Uncle Tom, and be like, oh, you know what? We are so about to Uncle Tom you right now. We're going to let you, shuck and jive your way to embarrassing your people. And so he needs to be called out. They all need to be called out. So don't shop at Walmart. Don't play Snoop's music or Soulja Boy or Rick Ross or Nelly.
Yeah, we would be hypocritical ourselves, Fatima and Dr. Debinga, if we didn't call out these rappers in the same way we're calling out these big Fortune 500 companies. We can't have it both ways. We can't say that we are in support of DEI efforts and that we want to hold accountable and that we will hold accountable these corporations if we don't hold accountable those very people in our communities who have made their livelihoods. They are who they are because of us. It was the folks in the hood, in communities, Black communities all over this country that bought their music, that went to their concerts. Nelly's from St. Louis is very, very embarrassing to me, and his explanation is utterly ridiculous. This notion that somehow people are independent and that by participating in the inauguration, you're not co-signing. Get a grip. Stop trying to gaslight us. We are too smart. Your listeners, your viewers, your fans, we're all too smart. We know that. When you stand on that stage, when you sign your name to this inauguration, you are saying to your fans, to your listeners, that Donald Trump is your dude. So let's just be real clear about that. And if you're willing to accept the consequences that come with that, then be man enough, man up on it and say that so that folks aren't out here, trying to make excuses for you. There's going to be some people that are going to keep riding with Snoop, keep riding with Rick Ross and Nelly. That's their prerogative. They have the right to do that. But those of us who are activists on the front lines trying to hold up Dr. King's dream and his legacy, we've got to call a spade a spade. And what Snoop did, Rick Ross, Nelly, it ain't cool. And let's just be real clear about that. And in the same way, we should be coming for McDonald's and Walmart and any of these companies. We should be doing the same for these rappers. Guys, we are out of time. You all have been so incredible. Your insights are amazing. We have so much work to do. This is a day of service. Dr. King's son, Martin Jr., I think he's Martin III, that is, he's told us to use this day to resist, but let our resistance be about rebuilding and building up our communities. So I know both of you are probably off to some King Day celebration, some day of service. We'll be talking because this issue of Dr. King's dream and how it gets realized as we in Southern California are trying to build back the predominantly Black community of Altadena is going to be top of the mind for us as we move forward. So again, thank you, Dr. Debinga. Thank you, Fatima. All right, the devastating fires, that's the other big news today, in addition to the inauguration, in addition to Dr. King's birthday. If you are in Southern California, if you are in the United States, you've heard about those fires and the hard work that frontline first responders, firefighters, paramedics have been doing, not just here in Los Angeles and the state, but firefighters from across the country have poured in to Southern California to help fight these fires. And the fires have devastated so many communities and thousands of lives. There's a lot of information that's circulating on the internet. So much of it is inaccurate, so much disinformation. But here on the special report, we are committed to separating facts from fiction, from giving you that information that will help you make good decisions. Look, a lot of people being preyed on. We know in the city of Altadena in particular, there were a lot of what we call legacy homes. There were a lot of homes that were owned by grandmama that were passed on to mama that now are passed on to grandchildren. Some of those grandchildren didn't have insurance on these homes, and these are multi-million-dollar homes. These are super expensive homes. These are homes that may cost millions of dollars to rebuild. We've already gotten reports that there are developers, unscrupulous, I should say, developers that are out in the Altadena, Pasadena community trying to get people to sell their properties for chump change, I'll call it, to bid and to get them to sell for less than market value, less than what they would be entitled to if they were actually selling those homes on the market. And what I am telling folks as an attorney, as a civil rights lawyer, slow down, be patient, don't make any quick decisions about what you want to do with your property. You may be feeling overwhelmed in this moment. You may feel like you don't have the energy, don't have the stamina to try to rebuild. We know the rebuilding process of a home that's been destroyed by a fire or earthquake or any disaster may take 3 to 5 years. But I just want to implore those folks to be patient. And again, we are so grateful for everyone that's participating on the special report, helping us bring accurate information so people can make informed choices. We have with us now Craig Little. He is the public information officer for the Los Angeles Fire Department, and he's here to help us again separate fact from fiction. Welcome, Craig. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Craig, again, we're here today on the special report about separating fact from fiction. And unfortunately, Donald Trump, he made a post on his Truth social media outlet where he made some statements about the fires and what could have happened and what should have happened. I just want to post that that social media post so that we can kind of unpack that in terms of what really did happen with regards to the wildfires and what people need to know in terms of where we are today with regards to those fires. So that social media post, again, has caused a lot of people to be concerned about just exactly what is going on. In the post, the president makes reference to water and water sources and water somehow being dumped by Gavin Newsom. Help us understand how water is used to fight fires and what the status of water and the use of water was when the brush fires broke out.
The water availability and how it works with hydrants. So hydrants are supplied by a municipal company. They are not, the water is not supplied by the fire department to a fire hydrant. It is municipal water that is supplied to the hydrant itself. So it is like a faucet, a vehicle to get water to our fire engines to supply water to extinguish the fire. So that's the first point there. We have the fire department has absolutely nothing to do with the availability of the water that comes out of that fire hydrant. That would be the municipal water company. Second of all, there's a few issues dealing with water dropping sources of water, where we had water dropping aircraft that were unable to fly during winds that are unprecedented. When we're talking about winds that are in excess of 80 miles per hour, it prevents our water dropping aircraft from not only flying, but also dropping water. Dropping water during a wind event that has winds that high is like just atomizes the water, and it prevents the aircraft from dropping on their intended target.
So help us understand, Craig, where are we now? We've heard a lot about the fires and containment. Can you explain what containment means and what the containment levels are for both the Eden fire and the Palisades fire?
I'm glad you asked that question. A lot of people are confused as far as the percentage of containment. We will probably put out a video on our YouTube page for Los Angeles County Fire Department that will explain that in detail. The best way that I can explain that to you right now is if we have a fire in a particular area, there is a line that we put around that fire to prevent its spread. So that line may consist of shrubbery, trees, combustible materials that have been cleared so the fire cannot go beyond that area. It also could be included phos-check drops, which is it's a fire deterrent or fire retardant, but it doesn't completely prevent fires, but it is a retardant. So if we have, let's say, a circular point, and then we draw a line around that circular point, that line would designate an area where the fire cannot spread anymore. So let's say if it's a portion, maybe 20% of that circle is completed, that means we have 20% containment. So that's what containment means. It's the area where the fire cannot spread, and it's where it's actually contained. When we have a fully contained fire, that's when we call it forward progress stopped. If it were a house fire, we would say we had achieved a knockdown. But right now, as far as wildfires are concerned, its forward progress has stopped. So right now we are at 59% containment, which means we have a line around the fire, a 59% line around that fire. The acreage has not changed for days now. So there haven't been active flames. So we have that containment here. Now that doesn't mean the percentage can't grow and the acreage can't grow. We have a wind event coming up tomorrow. That's going to be very strong. We are trying to hunker down as far as getting the right resources in place for that. But there is burning material that would be underneath where the fire had previously burned. Could be burning logs, could be just ash. We have things that are considered ash pits. Looks like there's no fire there. You dig up that ash pit, and then there's red hot material that could be blown all over the place and actually ignite another fire event. So we have our crews working diligently right now inside that fire to churn up that and ultimately extinguish all of that burning material so it doesn't blow away when we have our next wind event.
So, Craig, the Palisades fire, you said, is about 59% contained. And I think I read or saw something that said the Eaton fire was over 80% contained. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. I have that number for you, and it'll be right. I'll be right back. I would normally have that ready for you, but I'm actually here at the Palisades event. So I'm going to check that for you right now. It is a number. I just saw it, and I just pulled it up. I'll be right with you. So
Yeah,
as far as the Eaton fire is concerned, that's 14,021 acres, and we have 87% containment, and the fire is still considered active. As opposed to here in Palisades, we have 23,713 acres, and we have 59% containment.
So let me ask you, Craig, go back into the cause of these fires. Again, a lot of misinformation about how California manages its forests, the lack of diligence, the lack of appropriate forest management. Help us understand the conditions that lead to brush fires in a place like the Palisades and the Altadena communities.
So what we normally have as a textbook example of fire prediction, possible fire prediction, are significant wind events. We call them red flag warnings. So the major portions of that would be winds over 25 miles an hour and the actual humidity being under 15%. That would be a red flag warning situation that we would definitely look out for. Now, in this particular instance, winds were way over 25%. Like I said, 85. I heard some actually estimates of over 100 miles per hour. That is something that's unprecedented, and that's something that you really can't prepare to the fullest for. And it happens quickly. Maui, Lahaina is a prime example of that.
So you have these high winds. We've had drought, long periods of drought in Southern California. This may sound like a dumb question, but a lot of people ask because there's been a lot of talk about this. Even with the drought, even with the brush, you still need some fire source. Is that accurate? You need some spark. Do we know what that spark was for the Eden fire or the Palisades fire?
The cause for both of those fires are currently under investigation. We don't know at this point. We will eventually find out what that cause was, but this is really too early for us to tell exactly what the cause of that fire is, or even want to speculate to anyone at this point.
Okay, so there's been no official determination. So if people
no official determination
saying that it was something related to a utility company, or teenagers who might have been engaged in some kind of inappropriate conduct, we should just put all that to the side as speculation, because from the fire department standpoint, there's been no official determination.
Exactly. As with any fire, you can speculate all you want. There's various things that could happen, but we never want to do that officially because we don't know at this point.
Okay. Again, we've heard a lot of misinformation about the preparation. You just mentioned unprecedented. Are there any fire departments that you are aware of across this country that could have been better prepared than LA County Fire? Because someone told me that you guys are the best in the country and that people come from all over the country to study the LA County Fire Department.
No, that's correct. And again, these are unprecedented circumstances that happened. And you're mentioning people coming from all over the country. From all over the world. Even in our efforts to suppress this fire and work on this fire, we have people coming as far as Mexico, Canada, and Israel even to come out and work with us on this fire situation. So no, once you have, this is an event that exceeds anything that you can prepare for at this point. So there's nothing that any other fire department could have done better than the way we handled this situation right now.
So what do people need to know now, Craig, about the process of getting back into their neighborhoods? A lot of people are anxious to get back to see what damage has been done to their homes. We've had all of these warnings about the air quality. What would you tell people in terms of going into these communities, in terms of keeping themselves safe?
Well, I know in the Palisades area, we started repopulating as of yesterday. Now, there are certain criteria that we can allow people to go back into their neighborhoods and homes for whatever reason that is. We have to make sure that our civilians and citizens are safe to enter that area. So when we're talking about safety, we're talking about the safety of the structure itself so it doesn't collapse on top of them, but we also have toxic burning products of combustion, lithium-ion battery residue, burning plastics that are always toxic. We need to make sure that that is taken care of before we have citizens going into their own homes. We have people that are working on these fires that are professional firefighters that are already exposing themselves to this stuff. We don't want that for civilians.
So people should just wait. They should be patient. They should wait for the notifications from the county and other governmental entities as to when it's safe to return to their communities.
Exactly. We are not holding civilians out of that area just because. There is a valid reason, and it's their own personal safety.
Yeah, I want to go back quickly, Craig, before I let you go. We saw so many photos on the news of people with fire hoses on the tops of their roofs and in their communities trying to, water their homes or do things that they thought would help preserve their homes. What do you make of that? And is that a safe thing for people to do in the midst of a fire?
We would not encourage that at all. A common garden hose is going to do nothing when you have flames that high and moving with that much velocity. It's really useless for you to be essentially a person on top of their home trying to put out a fire off of their roof with flames that high. You're more of a problem to us than you are a help to your building.
Okay. And the last question I have for you, Craig, what is the most important information at this point that the LA County Fire Department wants people to know about these fires and about this tragedy?
Just to know that everyone that is on this fire, and I'm talking about fire companies across the country that are working on this diligently and getting very little sleep, working around the clock or with very limited breaks. We are doing the best that we possibly can, and this situation, again, is unprecedented as far as natural disasters in California.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Craig. You, as a firefighter on the front line, my good friend Robert Harris, all of the firefighters from the Los Angeles County Fire Department, from the city of Los Angeles. Very good friend of mine is your retired Chief Daryl Osby. So I have a lot of firefighter friends, and I know how hard you all work. I know how you put your lives on the lines to save so many people in our community. As you said, those firefighters that have come from around the world, we are grateful, so incredibly grateful to you for all that you do. We are praying for your safety. We are affirming. And again, I want to express my gratitude. I've been in the Altadena, Pasadena community working with a group of nonprofits providing relief. And I know that from all the victims that I've talked to, they also are so incredibly grateful for the work that all of you have done and will continue to do. So again, thank you. We'll be checking in with you as you all continue to do the great work of extinguishing these fires. So again, thank you, Craig, for joining
Thank you very
me.
much. Appreciate talking to you.
All right. We've been talking about not only the inauguration day, the inauguration that's happening live as we are live in this moment, but we've also been talking about the great legacy of Dr. King and the work that he did and how important that work has been for many, many decades. We've also been talking about these devastating fires that have swept through so many communities, particularly the Altadena, Pasadena community and the Pacific Palisades. We are here at the Special Report to, again, help separate fact from fiction, to bring you the best experts from around the country, from around the world on every issue from fire science to the inequities that many predict may happen if we're not diligent with the rebuilding of the predominantly Black Altadena community. And as I just said to Craig Little, my nonprofit Special Needs Network, we've been working with the Los Angeles Urban League, with Tiffany Haddish's foundation, She Ready, with Loyola Law School, and Professor Eric Miller, with Pastor George Hurt of New Revelation Baptist Church in Pasadena. We've been working with those nonprofits and others, providing much needed relief. Last week alone, we served over 6,000 hot meals to victims in the Altadena community. We gave out $12,000 in gift cards, cases and cases of water, I don't know how many boxes of diapers, personal hygiene items, bags of groceries, and other much needed supplies to families. We're continuing these efforts this week. We will be at the Special Needs Network's famed Renaissance office on the corner of Western and Adams in Los Angeles, because so many of the families from Altadena have relocated to live with family and friends in Los Angeles. Many of those folks in the Pacific Palisades have now relocated to Los Angeles. So we're committed to traveling to where we know families are to make sure they're getting the best resources. We are providing legal advice to families who have been impacted by the fires. We're helping them fill out their applications for federal assistance through FEMA, their applications for their insurance benefits, even SBA benefits. So we are not just talking about helping folks. We have boots on the grounds providing hands-on services. And if you want to be a part of this relief effort, you can volunteer your time. You can join us at the famed Renaissance relief location this week. Tuesday, we'll be there Tuesday, January 21st through Tuesday, January 28th. You can donate. You can donate to Special Needs Network. We need to, in order to continue this effort, we've had to hire new staff. We've had to rent locations to store so many of the items that have been donated. And we've had to expend a lot of resources. We do it because that's what we do. We're a go-to organization. So when there's a need, we just jump in and fill it. But we do it through a network of incredible volunteers like so many of you. And I would just want to thank those that have already donated. We've received donations from San Francisco, my good friends in St. Louis, my hometown. They've stepped up. Folks all over this country have heard the cries of these devastated families, and they are stepping up. We know our better angels tend to come out when there is a tragedy and when there is some kind of natural disaster like these fires. And we don't want to just help these families today. Special Needs Network, we're adopting hundreds and hundreds of families to see them from crisis through stability, because they're going to need us next week. They're going to need us next month. They're going to need us 6 months from now. They're going to need us a year from now. So again, if you want to get involved, go to Special Needs Network's website, snnla.org. Find out where we're going to be, where you can donate your time, where you can donate cash. We need to keep buying those gift cards. We want to keep providing those resources that families so desperately need. Again, I want to thank Craig Little for joining us. I want to thank Dr. Omikanga Dabinga, Fatima Gilliam. Make sure you follow all these folks on social media. Let's support each other. We know that together we can get through this challenge and any challenge that we face. Thank you so much again for the first episode of the special report that's back to cover the wildfires. We'll be back here Wednesday, Friday, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 a.m. PST. Check me out. Follow me on all things social media. I'm about to pass a big milestone on my Instagram page, almost 1 million followers because of all of you. I so love you. I appreciate you. And I can't wait to get your comments and to have you weigh in. Be well. Have a great King Day.
Calling all BIPOC college students, recent college graduates, and clinicians. Here's my story about CORE, a unique workforce development program that is changing lives. My brother is the most caring person you will ever meet. With his autism diagnosis, my family had to fight to make sure that the resources he deserved were available. That's why my goal has always been to help children with developmental disabilities and give them chances my brother may have missed. So when I heard about the CORE Fellowship, I knew immediately it was for me. The fellowship opens doors for myself and others like me. They offer training, a stipend while you're learning, job placement, and they'll pay up to $10,000 of my student loan debt. The CORE Fellowship is going to allow me to achieve my life's purpose. They care about me, so I can care about others, like my brother. Visit the website to learn more about the CORE Fellowship. Discover your core passion, your power, and your purpose. Apply today.
Last night, my brain couldn't think.